All right. Thank you so much, Amy and Rose. Again, good afternoon. It's great to be with you guys today. My name is Debbie Albert, and I'm an associate research engineer here with the Texas A&M Transportation Institute. I joined TTI to work with the great Tim Lomax just about a year ago after working for 20 years in the Phoenix metro area and working for local government and traffic engineering. Before I get started, though, I do have a confession. I have completely kicked Tim off of this presentation, but don't worry, there are plenty of times for us to take jabs at him, and I'm pretty certain he won't be able to keep his mouth quiet for 30 minutes, so we probably will hear from him throughout. But without further ado, let's talk about some of the construction projects going on in the Bryan College Station area. All right, so this map here shows all the projects we're going to talk about today. We've got all afternoon, right? Everybody's scheduled this for a few hours. Just kidding. Don't worry, a lot of these little dots here are quiet zone projects and are going to be discussed as part of one project. But as you can see, there are quite a few roadway construction projects that are underway or are planned for the area in the next few months and years. So warning, warning, very few places in Bryan College Station are safe from roadway construction, or as Tim would like to say, everyone gets the benefit of seeing construction trucks. Just a few quick housekeeping items. I'm gonna cover the projects in order from near term to longer term, but you can't hold me to the schedules because the railroad is involved in a lot of these, and sometimes that just takes time. But feel free to ask any questions along the way, like we talked about, either in the chat or raise your hand, and I'll try and keep an eye on that. But I like it to be more of a conversation than a college lecture. We'll leave those to Professor Tim. So first up, we're going to talk about the 2818 Super Street project. It goes from Stotzer Road on the north end, or just north of Stotzer. I think if you can see my cursor, it's here. So Stotzer on the north end down to Welborn on the south end. Since I'm still somewhat new to the area, I find it useful to get a visual on the locations of each of the projects. So I put one of these maps in with the projects highlighted in red at the beginning of each discussion so we can follow along with where I'm talking about. I am going to spend a few extra minutes on the 2818 project because it's ongoing and it's a rather large project and it's got some new and interesting concepts. But you may have noticed that the project is under construction. Most of the work is happening outside the roadway footprint over here on the east side, and that's in preparation for the new northbound lanes. The 2818 Super Street project has a significant capacity and safety element to it. The carrying capacity of the roadway will be enhanced by converting it from a 4-lane highway, shown here in the center of the page, up to a 6-lane roadway. And just kind of think of it like there's going to be a wide median, so it's frontage roads separated by a freeway in the middle. That's what the footprint will look like. Although there won't be a freeway in the middle, it'll just be the frontage road at this point. Here are the intersection elements of the project. On the north end of 2818 is the Stotzer at the Stotzer Parkway underpass. We're going to be lowering, or they're going to be lowering 2818 by 2 to 3 feet in order to be able to attain the 18-foot required clearance for underpasses. And then at the Bush, Luther, and Holloman intersections, they are going to be upgraded to Super Street intersections or a restricted crossing U-turn design or cut. And I'll show you in just a minute what that actually means. But the big deal here is that the design reduces the number of conflict points at the intersection from 32 down to 14 at each location, and the operations are also greatly simplified. And then finally, there's a new flyover bridge at the Jones Butler location shown here. And what that will do is it will connect Jones Butler Road on the north end to Holloman South down here. But this little piece that's missing currently will be constructed as part of a future College Station project. But the 2818 overpass will be constructed as well as the roadway, the small short section of roadway underneath will be constructed. So, and then finally, some new pedestrian and bicycle facilities are also included with the roadway enhancements. The timing for this project, obviously phase 1, utility clearing work, as well as constructing some of the are preparing for the construction of the northbound lanes is underway. Phase 2 and 3, which will be the construction of those 2 new roadway beds, northbound and southbound, that we saw on the last slide, that'll happen as part of phase 2, is expected to go through the next couple of years. And then phase 4 is actually the work that will be done on the inside, where they'll be constructing some crossover roadways and some U-turn roadways. And that the final project is expected to be complete in the summer, fall of 2023. Just a real quick detail before I go on to the nitty-gritty of the Super Street intersection, I wanted to mention that we are working closely with TxDOT and the contractor to identify opportunities to expedite the project and take advantage of some of those lingering lower traffic volumes from COVID and then also the summer. And so an example of that is the recent closure of 2818 up in this area around in here, where they installed a rather large culvert and they had 2818 closed over the weekend. So we're looking to do maybe some of those similar things that will help expedite the project, because by closing it for one weekend, we saved several weeks, if not months, of barrels and barricades and lots more impact to traffic. So let's take a little closer look at the Super Street intersection, or RCUT. Here's a zoomed in version of the George Bush intersection. And so if you're on 2818, things won't change a whole lot. You'll be able to follow, if you want to go straight through, you'll be able to follow the orange lines and you'll just go through the intersection. Same thing with the left turns. You just follow the green lines and be able to make your left turns, and then right turns would happen as normal. Now, when looking at how traffic will move through or making left turns off of George Bush will be quite a bit different. So again, if you want to make right turns, you make a right. If you want to go make a left turn at the intersection, you'll follow the blue lines and you'll make a right turn onto 2018 and then followed by a U-turn just past the intersection, and then can be able to continue straight through to make your left turn movement. And then if you wanted to go straight through the intersection, you'll follow those red lines and you'll make a right, a U-turn, and then another right turn. So the moral of the story here is just go right if you're on those cross streets. But one of the biggest advantages of these super street intersections is the signal operations are greatly simplified. Here on the right side of the screen, we show the existing signal operations at George Bush Drive. So we first start out and we serve the north and southbound traffic on 2818. That's followed by the left turns from 2818 onto George Bush. And then we would serve eastbound George Bush, followed by westbound George Bush. So this graphic here on the left shows the phasing for a super street. So in phase 1, the northbound and southbound traffic goes. You can see it's delineated by these green arrows. And then that's followed by phase 2, which would be your left turns on 2818, as well as all those right turns and U-turns that we just talked about. In traditional intersections, those protected left turns or the exclusive lefts that we saw on the top right here, those are their own phases. So just something to remember is that each phase includes yellows and all reds, which takes time that nobody gets to use. And that time adds up when you start looking at 6 and 8 phase intersections. So comparing the two, if you run a, so if we run 120-second cycle length, and cycle length is the time that it takes to serve all of the traffic movements at an intersection, kind of in a circular movement. If you go through and serve everything, it would take 120 seconds. With a super street intersection, you could give, say, 90 seconds to that phase 1, and then the remaining 30 seconds to phase 2. But with that current operation, the timing breakdown would look something like this. And so the super street allows the same amount of green time for those, that westbound Bush movement, so you at the same 30 seconds here. But during that time, you're also serving these left turns on 2818 as well as the eastbound Bush. So those two directions of travel, they actually get an extra 10 seconds of green. But a huge difference is actually this north and southbound movements, where they're getting actually 80% more time going from 50 seconds to 90 seconds. And that's a big deal when we're trying to move a lot of people like we've got on 2818. All right, so now moving on to the Wellborn-Holloman intersection, and this is an intersection raising project. So you can see the location here in the red dot. And the gist of this project is there's a significant elevation difference between the railroad tracks and the intersection. So this means that eastbound and westbound traffic do not run very efficiently as people are trying to navigate those severe grade breaks. So the idea is the intersection will be raised up to more closely match the railroad tracks. In addition to that elevation change, the west leg is going to be widened to add right turn lane, and safety improvements will be made to support activating a quiet zone at this location. So utility prep work is currently underway. There are some daily right turn lane closures on northbound traffic, and you can see those with the cones kind of off on the right side of that picture. And then you can also see that elevation difference that I was mentioning with that white car that's sitting there on Holloman. The big deal with this project is that it's going to require about a month to a month and a half complete closure of the Wellborn-Holloman intersection. That work was supposed to happen in May, June, so right now, but if you've driven through the area, you know it hasn't happened. So we ran into a little bit of an issue in getting the necessary approvals from the Union Pacific Railroad to do work in their right-of-way. So that closure has been delayed and is expected to happen next summer to take advantage, again, that fewer vehicles on the road and less disruption to the traveling public. For those of you who do not know what next we're going to talk about quiet zones. And so for those of you who do not know what quiet zones are, train engineers are required to sound train horns in a certain sequence at each crossing to alert drivers that they may be using the area or the crossing. Unfortunately, it's not just those drivers that hear the whistles, it's all of the people who are living or staying in the area. They also get the joy of hearing those whistles. And so there are quite a few efforts underway throughout the area to quiet those pesky trains. And you can see here that the project stretched from downtown Bryan all the way through South College Station. In order to establish a quiet zone, improvements must be made to the crossings to maintain safety thresholds. So just think about, have you ever gone around the gates at a railroad crossing? That's something they're really trying to avoid. So a good example of a safety enhancement is installing, say, 4 gates on the roadways approaching, on each side, coming from both directions on each side of the railroad, and then also medians to keep people from going around them. So in the interest of keeping the presentation moving forward, I'll just say that the process is rather lengthy and requires multiple reviews and approvals from the railroad, as well as the safety improvements in order to get those quiet zones established. Phase 1 of the Bryan Quiet Zone project includes 10 intersections in downtown. About 2 weeks ago, the Bryan City Council awarded its first contract to begin modifying the city streets at these railroad crossings. The modifications include installation of medians, and drivers should expect to see, or people should expect to see, construction with some lane restrictions or closures beginning next month. So weather permitting, the medians will be finished by the end of the year. And then Bryan does have plans for about 15 additional quiet zones in the downtown area. So once they finish these 10, there still will be more to come. The City of College Station does have an active quiet zone at the Greens Prairie Road crossings, shown down here at the bottom in blue, and is in either design or construction stage for 4 other locations. I already talked about the Wellborn-Holloman intersection, and I'll discuss a couple of those other locations here in just a minute. The Reuter South Dowling crossing, which is in this area, there isn't an active project for that quiet zone, but it is one that they're projecting to look into the future. Texas A&M Transportation Services is working on quiet zones at 4 locations, and they were in that yellow or the middle phase of the quiet zone process that we saw with all the bubbles or the bubble diagram. The current work includes installation or modifications of medians and gates. And then at this Kimbrough location, which is shown here, there is some additional work that's going on to address pedestrian and bicycle needs to get them from West Campus into Main Campus. And these improvements will help people to get access to the passageway under the railroad, under Welborn Road. The passageway is just off here to the right. Okay, so moving on to some of the projects that are not active but will be coming to construction maybe later this year. First is Rock Prairie Road. The area of Rock Prairie and Holloman is experiencing a tremendous amount of growth. And to keep people moving, Rock Prairie Road is going to be widened between Holloman and Welborn Road from 2 lanes, the current 2 lanes that you can see kind of off in the distance there, to a 3-lane road with sidewalks and streetlights. The project is going to include adding lanes to the west approach across the railroad tracks also, so that you'll have 2 through lanes and extending the turn lane. It'll help it tremendously in increasing the number of vehicles that can get through the intersection. Median modifications and a new signal at Welborn intersection are also included, and some of those improvements are to address those quiet zone applications that I had mentioned earlier. The City of College Station is expecting that the bidding process will start here towards the end of this month, and then that way construction can start in August or mid-September. The plan is for Rock Prairie, when this is under construction, would be reduced to one-way traffic eastbound, so towards the tracks, and then westbound traffic would be detoured at Deacon Drive would be detoured down to Deacon Drive at General Parkway, which is kind of down somewhere here in the middle of I think that's where it is in this location. And then just up the street from this location, there's also a project for Welborn Road in Deacon. So this project may sound familiar. It involves raising the intersection up 5 feet so that it's at grade with the railroad tracks, and then making intersection improvements to enhance the flow. Welborn and Deacon is going to be converted from that existing 3 legs that you see in the aerial to the 4-way intersection that's shown here, and they're going to add a new signal as well as bicycle lanes in this area. So basically, the City of College Station is replacing that Kane intersection or crossing of the railroad. They're going to be replacing it with this Deacon Drive and then adding some enhancements to it. Once this project is complete, the Kane Railroad crossing is actually going to be closed. So typically the railroad wants to close 1 crossing before creating a new one, and then sometimes they even require a 2-for-1, so you have to close 2 locations before you can get a new crossing approved. College Station is anticipating having a road approval for this project or an agreement in the next month or so, and then we'll bid the project out 1 to 2 months after the agreement is finalized. So if all goes according to plan, this project will go to construction later this year and will last about 1.5 years to complete. This project will require some closures as well as lane and turn restrictions throughout the project, particularly on Deacon, and then some restrictions on Welborn Road as they rebuild the roadway. But unlike Holloman, the plan is not to close this intersection. They're going to actually do the elevation changes and raising up the intersection while keep traffic moving on Welborn Road. So next is the Texas Avenue improvements in the city of Bryan. The limits of this project are just north of State Highway 21 down to University Drive. This project is under design and will include safety and mobility enhancements. Some potential improvements would include reconstructing the intersection of Texas Avenue and State Highway 21, possibly putting in raised medians to reduce turning conflicts, some landscaping and tree planting, shared use paths and sidewalks to help pedestrian and bicyclists get around or along Texas Avenue, with the ultimate goal is to reduce the number of conflict points because that's where the crashes happen. They want to make sure everybody gets to and from their destination safely. The picture on the top right shows the current condition of Texas Avenue, just north of Villa Maria, with that two-way left turn lane in the middle. And then the pictures on the bottom are of University Drive and on Briarcrest, and just give you an idea of how median modifications can be incorporated into the corridor. Phase 1 of the project is around State Highway 21 intersection, and medians and other improvements are anticipated at that location. They're hoping to advertise that project later this year. And then phase 2, which is kind of a longer stretch of it, public involvement is kicked off, and they're starting to contact business owners for those improvements. They're anticipating a fall 2022 advertisement for that project. There haven't been any public meetings yet on the project with the median layouts, and that's expected to happen probably later on this year. I'm going to just pause for a second because I know there's a couple of chats. Oh, and it looks like Tim has already responded. Okay, sorry, we'll keep going here. Next up is the William Joel Bryan project. The city of Bryan and TxDOT are also working on an enhancement project for William Joel Bryan between State Highway 6 and Texas Avenue. Oops. Moving forward. This project is in the design phase and expected to advertise for construction next summer. The project includes speed reduction elements such as narrower lanes or roundabouts. There'll be some limited landscape and other aesthetic enhancements, and shared use pathways for bicycles and pedestrians. There are some pretty unique features with this project. You can see here on either end of the Sue Haswell Park, there are 2 roundabouts. Those will serve as gateway features into the area. And then to help assist pedestrians in getting to and from the park, there, as well as navigating those roundabouts, there's actually 6 Hawk hybrid beacons that are planned for the project, and then 2 new signalized intersections that will also help in circulating traffic, but then also getting pedestrians back and forth across William Joel Bryan. So here's a zoomed in view of a roundabout on the east end of the project. You can see they're shown these 2 new Hawk locations that are part of the crosswalks for crossing William Joel Bryan. And then there's also, reconnection of the June Street intersection, and then they'll be removing a section of the Dollar General driveway and reconfiguring it so that it accesses just past the roundabout, and we can add in a right turn lane that will help with the operations of the roadway. I haven't seen a lot of Hawks around town yet, but unlike Tim, I haven't traveled every inch of Bryan College Station yet. But so for those of you who haven't heard of Hawks, it stands for High Intensity Activated Crosswalks. We will have a quiz later. And they're used to assist pedestrians in crossing the street while providing the least amount of disruption to traffic. So this graphic here shows how a Hawk operates. So just quickly, I'll go through it. When there isn't a pedestrian in the crosswalk or they haven't activated yet, the heads, they remain dark. And then once a pedestrian activates a Hawk and it's ready for them to cross, it will transition to a flashing yellow, and then to a solid yellow, and then to a double red. At that time, the pedestrian will be given the indication that they can walk across the street. Once the walk time has finished and they're in the clearance time for the pedestrians to cross, the signal or the beacon will transition to a flashing red or a wig-wag, so it'll transition back and forth and back and forth. And at that time, drivers who are sitting there, if the pedestrian has cleared the crosswalk or cleared the street, the drivers can actually proceed through the crosswalk after they've come to a stop condition. So if you're approaching it, you stop, there's no pedestrian there or they're already across the street, you can proceed through the intersection, which is what makes it more efficient than a traditional traffic signal where you have to wait regardless if the pedestrian's finished crossing or not. Let's see, moving on to State Highway 6 Central BCS Expansion Project. It's one of the highest regional priority projects in the area. Improvements are planned between Highway 21 on the north up here, all the way down to Fitch on the south end. A virtual public meeting was held in May of this year, and TxDOT is processing the comments that they received. The project presented includes a number of enhancements to improve both mobility as well as safety in the corridor. The big mobility features are widening the corridor from 4 to 6 lanes, as well as some various frontage road improvements. And then one of the features on freeways that presents a rather large challenge operationally as well as from a safety standpoint is those ramp areas where you've got a lot of weaving of people coming to and from the freeway onto the frontage roads or frontage roads onto the freeway. So this project was going to address those areas by connecting the on and off ramps with continuous auxiliary lanes, and then also adding collector distributor lanes in the area of Rock Prairie Road to 2818 or Harvey Mitchell Parkway. Construction there, the Texas Avenue interchange is also going to be reconstructed to eliminate the left turn exits. All of the work that's in this phase 1 is expected to be able to be completed in the current State Highway 6 right-of-way, so they're not going to need additional property to be able to complete that work. And then TxDOT is still working on the design for this phase, expects to advertise for construction in the fall of 2022. Phase 2 will come later and is really a potpourri of interchange type improvements. If you name it, we probably have it, but only if it starts with a D. So we're going to have some diamond interchanges, diverging diamond interchanges, and displaced lefts that are going to come with those. Shared use paths to help pedestrians and bicycle circulation to and from along the corridor is also planned in this phase 2. These improvements will require right-of-way to construct, so TxDOT is in the process of engaging with the property owners on those cross streets. As previously mentioned, that phase 1 does include construction of some collector distributor lanes from Harvey Mitchell down to Rock Prairie Road, as well as that Texas Avenue State Highway 6 interchange reconstruction. So the main lanes of Highway 6 will continue in this middle area, and they will be on a new bridge that will go over the new exit for Texas Avenue. So instead of that left exit that we're used to be able to get to Texas Avenue, people will now exit off here to the right into these collector distributor roads, and then will be able to come off to the left from there, travel underneath Highway 6 and other ramps, and then connect into the at-grade intersection. These collector distributor roads that are in the area, they will help in the transitioning of traffic from the freeway to the frontage roads without causing too much interaction between the two and messing up traffic with that slowing and those weaving operations we talked about. These are really beneficial in the areas where you've got a lot of closely spaced intersections or on and off ramps. The interchanges we talked about, so you see here the Rock Prairie Road interchange, it's kind of whited out, or it's not as colorful, and those will be done as part of the later phase. So a lot of the collector distributor, the frontage road improvements, those will be part of the first phase, and then the interchanges are later phases. Then last but not least, the Bush-Welborn intersection project. If you haven't heard of this project, well, then I think we need to have a little conversation with Tim, because he told me he has talked to everybody about it. But the current proposal for Bush-Welborn is a 3-level intersection with the Welborn Road through lanes being at the same level. So here's the northbound lanes, and then the southbound lanes are at the same level as the railroad. Then about half of a level down, you've got shared use pathways for bicycle and pedestrian facilities, and they connect all 4 quadrants of the intersection. And then about 35 feet down, so down here is where George Bush would intersect with the traffic that wants to turn off of Welborn Road. So thanks to many meetings, including these groups here, we got about 4,100 comments back on the surveys that were done in 2017. TxDOT has been working on getting the final design and funding, and at this point we'll be just likely back to talk to you guys about it once we have more information on any kind of schedule or final design details. So I know this is off topic, but I would be remiss if I didn't take a few moments to talk with everybody about the upcoming Aggie football season and everyone's favorite topic about football, traffic. These are just a few changes and reminders and maybe a couple of notices for everyone. So starting next month, Aggie Park, so the big grassy area between Houston and Coke Throckmorton, north of the Foundation Building and south of, I guess, yeah, in between the Foundation Building and University Center Garage, that's going to go under construction. They're going to be creating some great park amenities. It's going to be closed for that construction. There will still be tailgating options in other areas. And if you do have a parking permit, you can use the area within 15 feet of the curb for doing tailgating, but just don't use the sidewalks or the streets around the perimeter of the lots. We talked about the quiet zone projects earlier, but pedestrians should use the Welborn Road underpasses at Kimbrough and Joy Route, as well as Old Main. Please don't cross at the street. We spent millions of dollars on tunnels, so please use those. And then similar to 2020, the downtown Bryan location will be the only shuttle operation. So on and off campus bus routes will still continue to operate, but if you want to shuttle in to the game, you need to go to downtown Bryan to do that. Cosmos are new to campus this year. About 600 of them arrived in early 2021 or earlier this year. If you haven't seen them, they're similar to an electronic bike or an electric bike. We expect that people will use these quite a bit to get around campus, but keep in mind that the no wheel zones right around Kyle Field are still in effect. And so we want to keep pedestrians, bicyclists, everybody safe. A&M has gone to virtual parking permits, and details are being finalized on how the operations for the annual permit holders will function on game day. So if you fall into this category and have an annual permit, stay tuned for more information on how to use them for game day parking. And then finally, speaking of more information, Destination Aggieland, the app is no longer, and the TAMU mobile app is now your one-stop shop or one-stop location for game day parking and traffic. Details, if you haven't already, download the app onto your smartphone. It will look like what's up here on the screen, and then you can gain access to a lot of the same information that was on Destination Aggieland through this app. So if you didn't get enough information about these projects this afternoon, here are websites for most of the projects. If they had a website, I tried to include it so you can find out more details or just keep track of the progress. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. I did want to recognize that there were a lot of people that helped in putting together the presentation, a lot of the details. I'm just the lucky one who gets to talk about all of it, but there are a lot of folks who are out there doing the real work. So Paul Casper in the city of Bryan, Troy Rother and James Smith in College Station, Madison Mesker-Galarza, and Clint Willis from A&M Transportation Services, and then Doug Marino and Juan Perros from TxDOT all provided these great details. So with that, I would be happy to answer any other questions that, that you guys have.
We had one that came up in the chat, but I think Tim's going to check on that and get the information to us. And so I put in there as well that we're going to send, if y'all will send me this slide deck, I'll make sure to then send it with the video when we send out to our membership. That way they can take these links and link out if they want to, the different projects.
Yes.
Cool. So Debbie, do you want to, can you stop your screen share and then we can take some additional questions. I'm going to add us back in. Rose, if you'll come back on camera, I'll spotlight you too. There she is. Okay, cool. So questions, you can unmute, turn your camera on if you want to. You don't have to. You can unmute and ask any questions you might have. Let's see. Chandler's got another question in the chat. It says, other question might be outer loops. When or if would those be on the drawing table?
And I may have to phone a friend on Tim on that one. But at this point, I know there have been discussions about them. They're included in the thoroughfare plan. That's the MPO thoroughfare plan. But I don't believe there are any specific details on when they might come into play or the exact location of them. They haven't been studied that closely yet.
I think the first piece that might get done is a piece of the east, sort of east and north. There's a Interstate 14. I don't know how many of you have heard of that, but there's a in the federal legislation, there's a designation of Interstate 14. There will be a route study that will get more specifics, but it basically would come in from the east and go out towards Belton, and the east side and north side of a loop might be the first piece of Interstate 14. Eventually, there would be a 214 that would then go all the way around the region in the regional thoroughfare concept. It goes pretty far south, doesn't quite get to Navasota, and goes over into Burleson County on the west side. But all of that is a fair distance off in the future.
Great. Thank you, Chandler, for the question.
Jim, I think what I was asking about is maybe like a East 2818 scenario.
Okay, yeah, there is an inner loop, and it would come off of the north side and go around the east. It wouldn't be a full loop, but it would get down to. Let me get back to you on that too. Again, I would be drawing on the regional thoroughfare concept that the Metropolitan Planning Organization has put on their website, and I'll add that website into maybe we could add that into the slides before we send those over.
That would be great.
How about that?
And then another additional question from Tracy. What's the plan for adding lights to the 2818/Emerald Parkway intersection?
That I would have to follow up, I think, and find out some more detail from TxDOT on. I am not aware of any projects or plans for that. Now, and I'd have to check to see if that is included as part of the BCS Central or the Highway 6 Central BCS project as part of those interchange enhancements. But we can find out about that one also.
Cool. Additional questions from anybody? Yeah. So we'll get the revised slide deck, and then when we send out the video to everybody from today, then we'll include that as a link. You can link out to it, and then you'll have those links all live and active, and you can, click through and all that stuff. So that sounds great. Any final questions, anybody? I don't see any coming through. Shout out to Rose for setting up our speakers for today as well. So we appreciate that. Any parting words, Rose?
Not really. I just want to thank Tim and Debbie for the information. We have seen the dirt moving and the trucks and everything else, keeping 2818 active. And I know that there are a lot of people that live on that side of town, including me, that will be happy to see those changes made.
Yeah, now we understand.
Well,
We
thank
appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, and thank you, Tim, for throwing in a couple answers there and helping out with that presentation. And thank you, Debbie, for doing our presentation today. And we'll get this video all edited up, and we'll get some of the supporting materials and send that out to both of our memberships just as soon as we can. And if you have any ideas for future REALTOR-Builder Zoomy things that we're doing them every other month. So if you have an idea of something you'd like for us to do, you want some specific piece of information, shoot either Rose or myself an email, or you can email Adam too. And we can work on that for you, but we're happy to do these. They're easy. And I mean, look, 246. Awesome. So, all righty. Well, thanks everybody. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Rose. Thank you, Adam. I'll thank myself too, because
Thank you, Amy.
sometimes.
There you go.
Thank you for being the technology guru to put it all together.
That's right.
Well, thanks everybody. Y'all have a great afternoon.
You
Bye.
too.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Bye.
it.